Live from the City Building in Athens, Ohio, your local source for live city meetings, TGC 15 presents Athens City Council.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone who has joined Athens City Council to view and listen to a presentation by Paul Fenn, Renewable Energy and Local Energy Independence CEO. It's our great fortune to have so many people here that we will need additional chairs, and we may be getting those shortly. And we will be rebroadcasting this on the cable channel, on the government channel. At this point, though, for three other council members, all would like to ask you to join us in a round of applause for Mr. Fenn. Even though we haven't heard him yet. But before he starts, we're going to hear Spruce Hauser is going to read a letter from our colleague, Mr. Allahu Ghazni, who's off on a destination wedding, his own to be exact. So, Spruce, take it away.
Had a good excuse to be absent.
He does.
In the Dominican Republic. He just got married a few days ago.
Yes.
And but Elahu sent me a message he'd like me to read to the people attending this event tonight. Said, I would like to sincerely thank Gary Hauser for inviting Mr. Fenn to Athens and for his important work on environmental issues over the years. I would also like to thank Mr. Paul Fenn for bringing his expertise and knowledge on green energy to Athens. I hope we can work together in the near future. Also, I give my thanks to Nancy Bain for helping to plan and facilitate this meeting. It is clear that there must be a drastic change to reduce greenhouse gases in order to protect our world from the imminent threat of climate change. There has not yet been a substantial effort at the state or national level to combat climate change. We have a moral responsibility to act at the local level to begin a serious effort to reduce the environmental impact of our own energy consumption in a bottom-up approach to change course. Our community can be at the forefront of this emerging concept of local solutions to global climate change. We cannot make the mistake of underestimating the urgency of this situation. We cannot count on anybody else to solve this problem for us, and we cannot afford to wait. The time to act is now. And I might want to also add that Elahu Ghazni is the chair of the Environment Committee. So that's the statement that was sent.
Thank you very much. And we would now like to proceed with a presentation of PowerPoint from Mr. Fenn, and then we will have questions. And we will probably try to hold you to 3 minutes when you ask your question, so Mr. Fenn has time to answer. We've had experience with this before. Sometimes people talk more than the answer requires. So, Mr. Fenn, I've done Walmart, so I can do this.
Thank you, Nancy, and members of the council, Mr. Mayor. Pleasure to be here. Great to be in Ohio. I come from San Francisco and have not really worked in Ohio since helping the legislature draft the 1999 law that authorized community choice aggregation here in Ohio in conjunction with a number of groups, including Citizen Action. I was always at a distance on conference calls and emails, and so it's very nice to be here. I'm impressed with how lovely the state is, really. I thought Ohio was just a tarmac with a bunch of factories on it. And, I drove down through here and was shocked to see all the forests, and it's really a lovely place. So it's very good to be here. I want to start out with the title here, this term climate works. My company, Local Power, which is based in San Francisco, has been working on energy and on community choice aggregation for about 15 years. And the latest incarnation of our concept for an appropriate response to climate change is the basic concept of public works. And so the term climate works is an effort to express the concept of public works as a climate response. Next, Gary, please. I'm going to start out with bad news, and it's pretty bad. there is a growing pessimism among scientists observing the phenomenon of climate change, those in the front lines who are watching the icebergs, who are counting the CO2 in the ice, who are watching the rate of the thaw. Among the scientists, there is a growing conviction that it is too late to stop the changes taking place. You may have read this, that it's been forecasted this summer will be the first summer the North Pole completely melts into water for the first time probably in some 20,000 years. The last time it melted was a beginning of a climate crisis, a climate collapse. And obviously the evidence that's occurred is devastating. And yet the effects are not felt locally until it's too late. It's one of the kind of psychological problems with climate change, is that the effects aren't felt locally until it's too late to do anything about it. And it really tests in a sense, the basic principles of the Enlightenment, the notion that democracies can make rational decisions in response to reasoned knowledge of what's happening rather than immediate emotional experience. We have an observed phenomenon, it's undeniable, and yet the question is, at what point will we get serious about this event? And so there is increasingly among scientists who see a lack of seriousness in the political debate, a growing desperation, and that desperation has led many of them to conclude that nuclear power is the only solution to the crisis. One of the main messages I want to convey today is that desperation is ill-founded, that there is an opportunity today to take meaningful action on climate change. Doesn't mean we can stop what's already happened. It doesn't mean that we can prevent a catastrophe, which is obviously happening already. But it does mean that we can eliminate the cause of climate change. We can circumscribe the event. We can respond to this event and not merely stand by and watch it happen, or resort to the phenomenon of nuclear power. Please go to the next slide. Now, part of the pessimism is that even in the United States, even the leaders are not leading. And it's more bad news, I'm afraid. I have to add to bad news, which is California, the state from which I come, is known for having taken first action on carbon. Assembly Bill 32 set in place greenhouse gas reduction targets for the state. The state was also first to adopt a renewable portfolio standard, and is regarded as a leader, as a kind of model for other states in the national discourse. And yet, a look at California as a state is disappointing. In fact, the utilities are not complying with the renewable portfolio standard law, and they have effectively forced the hand of state regulators to loosen standards, sort of extra statutorily authorizing utilities to not comply. They are not imposing penalties in response to noncompliance. And to me, the event looks like a kind of third world collapse of state authority, where the states can pass whatever laws they like, they're not enforced, the private sector does not comply, and then the authority of the state to enforce its decisions and its laws is then diluted. It demoralizes the political debate, and effectively there's a kind of political death spiral that occurs where there simply is a perception of impotence on the part of the government to do anything. That kind of political collapse is very dangerous, and I believe, and I want to say today, that that collapse results from an age-old ideology really about energy, which forces our thinking into a kind of policy box, a cage, an intellectual cage that limits what we consider to be possible. And the cage is really, ironically, is defined by our unconsciously held economic theories about how things have to work and how things are limited. Specifically, Gary, please, the next slide. Specifically, that markets have to deliver the solution to climate change.